Good afternoon, everyone, or evening, depending on where I guess it's evening for all of us. I'm Natalia Abrams. Thank you for joining us. You're here to learn all about the SAVE plan and what to do now that we have gotten the unfortunate information that SAVE has ended. We're going to give folks a second here to trickle in, and we will get started. All right, let's go over some housekeeping before we get into it. So just a reminder, if it's your first time joining us, we are Student at Crisis Center. We are a national advocacy organization with nearly 2 million supporters nationwide, calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end once and for all to the student debt crisis. We want to give a special shout out to our funders that makes these workshops possible to you all. The programming was funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and we thank them for their support. However, the information presented on this workshop are those of SDCC alone and do not reflect the opinions of the foundation. So some quick reminders for this workshop. I believe the chat has been disabled. We will be able to send you all some important links and information through the chat. But if you have a question, and I'm sure you will, please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. We have many folks on our team here to help, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible. Any information on today's clinic pertains to the current guidelines and rules as of today, April 8th, 2026. This is really important to remember that this is a date stamped event. We see that the news for student loan debt has been changing, day by day, sometimes hour by hour. So always check the most recent news, check back with us to make sure that whatever we've talked about today is still in effect. A recording of this workshop will be provided via email to anyone that's attended. You should get that follow-up email in about 24 hours after this workshop concludes. So today we're going to go over what is happening with the SAVE plan, why is it ending, what to do next, so what are your repayment plan options, and how much will you pay on these other plans, what will that look like, and then if you are in SAVE but pursuing public service loan forgiveness or interested in public service loan forgiveness in general, what can you do, and more. Quick disclaimer, we are not financial counselors or attorneys, but we are advocates and experts here to help you as much as we possibly can. All right, with that, let's go over some federal updates. So many of you may have heard, I know a lot of folks are reaching out to us, that the Department of Education announced that the student loan portfolio will be moving to the Treasury Department. There's a lot of unknowns, and actually you're going to hear that quite a bit through some of this workshop. But there are unknowns on what's going on with Treasury. But what we do know is that defaulted loans are going to be moved first. The remaining student loan portfolio will follow. And then lastly, they want to move student loan run programs such as federal student aid, run by federal student aid, such as FAFSA and Pell Grants, to also be taken over by Treasury. Speaking to some colleagues, this could be a slow process. This is definitely, we are watching this space. Last week, Senator Warren called this an illegal move to Treasury and is asking that they stop this. At Student at Crisis Center, we have followed up with a petition. We think it's really important that we halt this move, but we want you to know, as of right now, this is what is happening. If you see the highlighted yellow at the bottom, what can you do now? We highly recommend saving and documenting all of your student loan information, both at studentaid.gov and from your loan servicer. So you have all the information, in case if it gets moved, something happens. Now, I'll also just answer one of the top questions we are getting, which is many borrowers are saying, well, I didn't sign my promissory note with the Department of Treasury. I did it with the Department of Ed. Unfortunately, the way they're getting around that is they're calling it an interagency agreement, and therefore they're claiming they're not selling your loans. It's a lot of ways to get around it, but you still unfortunately do owe your student loans, even though it's moving to Treasury. So some more federal updates. There are major changes coming July 2026, July 1st, 2026. You're going to hear that date a lot throughout this workshop as a result of the so-called One Beautiful Bill, or OBBBA. The changes discussed today that were included in this bill, but we're still waiting for the final rule through the negotiated rulemaking process. We expect that to come sometime in May, but these changes include new lending limits for students and parents, a new standard plan. This is for anyone that takes out a loan after July 1st of this year, and phasing out of one of the two repayment plans available. So we will see a phase out of ICR and pay as you earn, but that won't be until July 1st of 2028. But what will happen July 1st of 2028 is a new repayment plan called the Repayment Assistance Plan, or RAP. Keep in mind, though, that until 2028, ICR, income contingent repayment, and pay as you earn will still exist. And income-based repayment is a legacy program that is not going away for borrowers as long as you don't take out any new student loans after July 1st of this year. In addition, there continues to be significant backlogs in application processing and loan discharges at the Department of Ed. I think there's still somewhere around 500,000 applications that are in backlog, including the public service loan forgiveness buyback. And so we hear you. That's one of the bigger complaints that we hear from student loan borrowers. All right, so what is SAVE? I think many people know that that's on this call, Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, and why is it ending? So the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan was an income-driven repayment plan that was created in 2023 by the Biden administration. If anyone previously enrolled in the repay plan, this was an older plan, was automatically placed into SAVE, and repay has since been phased out. Many borrowers also applied for the SAVE plan, and now we have more than 7 million borrowers that are enrolled in this SAVE plan. Now we get to today, which recent court rulings in the past month have effectively ended the SAVE plan. As a result, the Department of Ed has started to notify folks enrolled in the SAVE plan that the SAVE plan and forbearance will end soon. So if you've been on the SAVE plan, you've been in a loan forbearance for years now, not having to make money. For a while there, you weren't having to pay interest. I believe August of last year, interest started accruing on student loans. And now this forbearance is coming to an end. Many of you may have already received the notice from the Department of Education. Starting on July 1st, there's that date again. Loan servicers will issue a formal 90-day notice to borrowers, and this will come from the loan servicer, not from the Department of Ed. And once you get this, it's going to give you your 90-day clock starts to switch into a different repayment plan, a different income-driven repayment plan. And if you don't do that, you will be automatically placed onto the standard repayment plan. And that can result in much higher payments. So again, this is in red. You have 90 days from the day you receive your notice to apply for another repayment plan, if that's what you want. Here's an example. Many of you have been sending us your notices. This is what you received from the Department of Education. I want to stress, this is not the formal notice. This is not, no one's 90-day clock has started yet. Those will begin July 1st, and those will come from your loan servicer. So a question we get, wasn't SAVE supposed to go away closer to July 1st? However, SAVE was attacked in two ways, via the courts and through that so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Unfortunately, the courts settled sooner, and so we know that this is going away effectively, but before the end of this year, roughly 90 days after July 1st, depending on when you receive the notice. The OBBA also states that SAVE, along with ICR and Pay, but we know SAVE is going to be phased out much sooner, but ICR and Pay will be phased out July 1st, 2028 or sooner. And SAVE again is going away this year. So tips, because this is so unfortunate. We know that SAVE was by far the most generous repayment plan out there. It's really disheartening to see this go. We want you all to be careful with misinformation. We've seen servicers tell borrowers that they need to consolidate to get out of SAVE. This is absolutely incorrect. So what should you do right now if you're on a SAVE forbearance and you're worried about getting this notice around July 1st from your loan servicer? Find out what repayment options are good for you and that you qualify for it. And we're going to go through this step by step shortly. Use tools such as the loan simulator and the EdCap tool to estimate your monthly payments across existing repayment plans. Make sure your contact information, this is crucial, that your contact information is up to date on your servicer website and studentaid.gov. But if you're looking out for that notice around July 1st, you want to make sure your information is up to date so you get that formal notice. Right now, whether or not you switch out of SAVE is still up to you or closer to the deadline. As we get more information and guidance from the Department of Ed, we will, of course, bring it to you in more workshops coming up. If you're close to the end of public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment credit thresholds, you're 9.5 years into a 10-year public service loan forgiveness plan, or 19 years into 20 years for an IDR plan, you may want to consider switching out of the SAVE forbearance and into another income-driven repayment plan sooner than later to start getting those credits. So how do you find what repayment plan you're enrolled in? Well, one of the best things for you to do and first things to do is go to studentaid.gov. Make sure to type in www.studentaid.gov directly into your browser. This is because there's scams out there. We'd hate for you to go to the wrong website. Make sure your personal information, including email, phone number, address, is up to date. If you have trouble logging in or resetting your password, you can call their 1-800 number, 1-800-433-3243, or go online to studentaid.gov, and I'm sure my team will share that in the chat. And with that, oh, sorry, one more slide just on navigating studentaid.gov. You want to go to where it says view my loans. So the front page has changed a bit if you haven't visited it in, say, a year or so, because you've been on the SAVE forbearance. One of the tips is to check out the My Loans section. To learn more, click on View My Loans to see if your loans are enrolled in different repayment plans. Find the status of your loans, whether you're in repayment, forbearance, or default. As you can see here in the My Loan section, it says repayment plan and saving on a valuable education plan. This is how you would verify that you are in SAVE, and then you would know that you need to take action if you want to continue being on a repayment plan because the standard payment is too high for you. And with that, I'm going to toss it to my colleague, Sabrina Calazans, to go over the student loan repayment option.
Thanks, Natalia, and thank you all for being here with us today. We're already seeing some questions about your options outside of SAVE, so let's jump into that right now. All right, so when we're looking at repayment plans, as many of you know, when you first enter into repayment, you're placed into the standard plan. That is the default option. If you go into your loan servicer account, sometimes they call it the level plan. Now, there are some other options available besides the standard. So I'll start with the alternative plans here, which are the graduated repayment, extended repayment, and extended graduated repayment. These are variations of the standard plan and are essentially payoff plans. And then there are the income driven repayment plans, and that's income contingent repayment, ICR, income based repayment, IBR, pay as you earn or pay, and the save plan, and also wrap. Now, as Natalia said earlier, the wrap plan is not yet available. That is going to become available on July 1st of this year. And I also want to note that not everyone qualifies for the pay plan. There are loan origination date restrictions, as well as a partial financial hardship requirement that you must meet in order to qualify for pay. And also, because of the SAFE plan ending, no one can enroll in that plan at this time. All right. So when we're talking to borrowers and folks who have student loans, I think one of the most important things for you to consider is, what is your repayment goal? We hear all the time folks saying, I've been in repayment for so many years and my balance has only grown and it hasn't gone down and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Now, there are two pathways to repayment that you need to consider. The first is paying off the loans. Now, if your goal is to pay off the loan in full, then you should consider the standard plan or one of those fixed plans. Those plans, as you're making payments, the balance is actively going down. You're making progress because you must pay off the balance in full. There's no loan forgiveness attached to those repayment plan options. However, if your goal is to have your loans forgiven, then something like an income driven repayment plan, which SAVE is one of them, again, IBR, ICR, Pay, and soon WRAP, these are all IDR plans or income driven repayment plans. Your goal with an income driven repayment plan is to make the lowest monthly payment possible over a certain amount of time. And then after you've made a required number of payments, you then qualify for loan forgiveness on the remaining balance. Your balance is not going to go down essentially because your monthly payment is very low and it doesn't cover the interest and it doesn't reach the principal. So it's very often where we see the case where someone's balance can double or triple, as we often see folks talk about. So when you're thinking about repayment, think about these two options and which option is the best one for you. Now, quickly covering the standard plan and the fixed alternative plans. Again, these are payoff plans. So with the standard plan, these are fixed monthly payments that are based on your loan balance. So if you have unconsolidated loans, the repayment term on the standard plan is 10 years. If you have consolidated loans, it will vary anywhere from 10 years up to 30 years based on the loan balance. Now, these monthly payments can often be unaffordable, and so there are more affordable options available for folks who are struggling to meet those monthly payments, such as an income driven repayment plan. Again, there is no loan forgiveness on the standard plan. And with these fixed alternative plans, there are three of them. The extended plan, this is a plan with fixed monthly payments with a repayment term of 25 years. It is only available to folks with balances above $30,000. Then there's the graduated plan where payments are gradually increasing every 2 years, and the timeline depends on your loan type and the balance. And then there's the extended graduated plan, which is a combination of the increased payments every 2 years over a 25-year timeline. And again, this is only available for balances above $30,000. So again, a recap that these plans are all payoff plans and good options for folks looking to lower their monthly payment. And also for folks who are going through SAVE, we're going to talk through some tools that you can use to see what your monthly payment is going to be on other repayment plans. For some folks, it ends up being that those fixed alternative plans end up being more affordable than income-driven repayment plans. So those are options for you. Now, let's talk about the income-driven repayment options available to folks. Now, what is income-driven repayment or IDR forgiveness? IDR forgiveness is available after you've made a certain number of payments while enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan. The repayment terms range from 20 to 25 years. In a few minutes, we're going to cover the specifics for each plan. And then with the wrap plan, the one that's coming July 1st, that is going to be a little bit different because it'll have a 30-year repayment term. So it's going to be longer. Now, with each monthly payment that you make, you are receiving one income driven repayment credit. So the goal at the end of the day is that over those 20 years, you would need to make 240 credits. And if you're looking at 25 years, it would be 300 credits. The goal is to hit that credit goal to then have your loans forgiven. And unfortunately, you cannot make multiple payments per month to receive multiple credits. It's one payment equals one credit each month. So you will have a balance usually larger than what you borrowed at the end of your repayment term. If you're working towards IDR forgiveness, the remaining balance is forgiven. So again, if I started making payments in January, I would have one credit. Once I make a payment in February, I would have two. March, I would have three, and so on and so forth until you reach the required number of credits for loan forgiveness. Now, we're going to do our best to not say so many acronyms, but it just happens at the end of the day. So, to sort of differentiate between what we're saying here, IDR is an umbrella term. It's income driven repayment. It's the name of the overall program. Now, when we're looking at IBR, ICR, pay, wrap, and save, those are all types of IDR plans. They fall under that umbrella category program. So when we're saying IBR, ICR, we're talking about types of repayment plans that are income driven. They're based on your income. All right, so quickly going over some of the benefits of income driven repayment plans for folks. The monthly payments are calculated as a percentage of discretionary income. So it's going to be based on income and family size, not the loan amount. Monthly payments may be more affordable than the standard plan, and they could help to keep folks out of delinquency and default. They are especially helpful for folks with lower incomes, those who are unemployed, or those with decreased incomes. If you have no income or a very low income, your payment could be as little as $0. Now, we're going to get into the wrap plan soon, but the new minimum payment on that plan is $10 per month, and they use adjusted gross income, not discretionary income. Some other benefits are that every 11 months, you will need to recertify your income and family size or essentially share updated information with your loan servicer so that your monthly payments can be adjusted for the next 12 months. If your wages decrease or you become unemployed at any time, you can recertify before those 12 months have gone by so that you can lock in that lower monthly payment for the next 12 months. Most periods of forbearance and deferments do not count towards IDR credits. We're seeing that right now with the SAVE plan forbearance. The time in the SAVE plan forbearance does not count towards IDR credits. And then one question that we're asked often is, if I'm getting out of the SAVE plan, am I going to lose all of my progress on my loans? What happens with that? So if you have IDR credits and you're in an IDR plan, they transfer over as you move from one plan to another. So let's say I had 140 credits while I was enrolled in the SAVE plan and prior to that, and now I'm looking to go into the IBR plan. Those 140 credits are going to transfer over from the SAVE plan to the IBR plan, and you will continue to make progress until you reach the required number of payments to reach loan forgiveness. All right, so breaking down the specifics of the IDR plans. The pay as you earn plan looks at 10% of your discretionary income over 20 years, which is equivalent to 240 credits in order to reach loan forgiveness. The new version of IBR, which is for loans originated after July 2014, that is 10% of your discretionary income over 20 years or 240 credits. The older version of IBR, which is loans originated before July 2014, is 15% of your discretionary income over 25 years, meaning 300 credits required. For the ICR plan, it's 20% of your discretionary income over 25 years, again, 300. The wrap plan, and we're going to go over that in just a moment, is different in that it's 1 to 10% of your adjusted gross income. The repayment term is longer at 30 years, which then results in needing 360 credits for RAP. Now, again, not everyone qualifies for pay, and Parent Plus loans specifically only qualify for the ICR plan and IBR. And I also want to note, because there are a lot of changes happening, and you might see it in the news, or you might see that we talk about it on other workshops. Um, there are changes coming in terms of repayment plans and things beginning July 1st. But if you have loans right now and you don't, and before July 1st, 2026, if you don't plan on taking on any more loans, you will continue to have access to these plans and apply for them even after July 1st. So just keep that in mind, because we're hearing a lot of confusion where folks think that July 1st will be a cutoff and you won't be able to apply for any of these anymore. But that's not the case. That will only be the case for folks who take out new loans or consolidate on or after July 1st of this year. So you will continue to have these options. Okay, so looking at the RAP plan, or repayment assistance plan, this is slated to begin on July 1st of this year with a repayment term of 30 years. All borrowers with direct loans qualify, with the exception of Parent Plus loans for RAP. Now, if we look at the chart on the right-hand side here, there may be some benefit to folks to enroll in the RAP plan. So if you look at someone making 20,000 to 30,000, that looks at 2% of your income, which is going to result in $33 to $50 a month. Um, Someone making 60,000 to 70,000, it looks at 6% of your adjusted gross income, and that might be $300 to $350. However, as you go up, the monthly payment is also going to increase significantly. So take all of that into consideration. Also take into consideration the repayment term of 30 years. We will share in just a moment here a few tools that you can use to calculate what your monthly payment could be on the RAP plan as well. Some of the bigger things to note, however, is that $0 payments will no longer exist under the RAP plan. So even if you're making $0 or you're making less than $10,000, your minimum monthly payment is going to start at $10. So keep that in mind. The RAP plan is a little similar to the SAVE plan in the sense that it waives any interest not covered by the borrower's monthly payment and will reduce the borrower's principal by up to $50 if the payment does not do so. And again, this is going to be based on adjusted gross income, which is less generous than the calculation for SAVE, and also more expensive than the other IDR plans for lower income folks. So just some things to note if you're considering the RAP plan. Some other changes, as Natalia mentioned at the top, due to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, IDR plans are set to be phased out by July 1st, 2028 at the latest, and that includes the income contingent repayment plan and the pay as you earn plan. Some folks ask us, well, then why would I enroll in ICR or pay to begin with if those are going to be phased out? If you go through the tools that we're going to share with you, and ICR or pay is the lowest monthly payment for you, and that's what the best option is to keep you out of default and to continue making progress, it's worth applying for those plans, even though they're going to be phased out, and making those lower monthly payments. And then once you get the notice in the future that it's going to be phased out and you have to leave those plans, at that point, you can then change repayment plans. So again, it's about what's best for you and your finances. And if those are the best options, then I would consider applying for them. But in the meantime, do explore your repayment options to prepare for these changes. And when the time comes, if borrowers enrolled in Pay or ICR do not choose another repayment plan, direct loans will be placed into the RAP plan, and FEL loans and any direct consolidation loans that repaid a Parent Plus loan will be placed into the IBR plan. So just some things to keep in mind. If you are looking to apply for an income-driven repayment plan, you can do so at studentaid.gov. You'll need to have your permanent and/or mailing address, your family size. We're also recommending that folks, when you're going through these applications, consider opting into the IRS integration. We're seeing those applications being processed more quickly. It essentially is you giving consent to the Department of Education to connect with the IRS and pull from your last year's tax filing. So that is something to consider. However, if from the last year's tax filing to now you're making less money, you may want to consider manual documentation. And then again, manual documentation is taking a little bit longer, but if that's the best option for you to lock in a lower monthly payment, do what you need to do. And in that case where you want to manually document, you would need to use one of the following. So a W-2, a pay stub, an employer letter certifying gross income, a bank account statement, anything of the sort to show the income that you are making. And then one of the other changes that we've seen to the application is that you must know what plan you want to enroll in. In the past, there was the option that had the lowest monthly payment option available, and the department would enroll you in whatever would net the lowest monthly option. But that is no longer the case, and that was removed from the application. So that will no longer be available, and you must select a plan. Okay. Something else that we are seeing and getting a lot of questions about is processing. So it can take a few days to weeks to even months to process your application. As I stated, opting into that IRS integration is being processed more quickly than those manually documenting income. Um, if it makes sense for you to wait a little bit longer because then payment is going to be higher, you can consider manually documenting your income. And also, when you are applying and submit that application, you should be placed into a processing forbearance. It's not like you will submit the application and then you're going to have a monthly payment due the next day. You should be placed and notified that you are placed to a processing forbearance. If you are not and you are getting a bill, you can call your servicer and demand to be placed into one. If in the past you've submitted an application that's still pending, requesting that lowest monthly payment, or you tried to apply for SAVE and you have a pending application, you'll need to resubmit your application, submit another one. And also, if you've applied before March 2025 for an income driven repayment plan and your application is still pending, you may want to consider resubmitting your application. It could have gotten lost, and so consider resubmitting. All right, so let's talk about how to estimate monthly payments on different plans. There are a few options to do that, and we have some slides to show you a visual example of what that looks like. So there is a loan simulator that you can find at studentaid.gov. You can also call your loan servicer if you want to just get a little bit more information, if you want to ask some follow-up questions, you can contact your loan servicer. And then there's also the EdCap tool, which is a tool created by our partners that also does a really good job estimating what your monthly payment could be. And it has the new WRAP plan also on that tool, whereas the studentaid.gov loan simulator does not. And it's also worth noting that these do not guarantee 100% accurate results. These are just estimates. So if we're going with the loan simulator first, you would log into studentaid.gov. You find that toolbar at the top, loan repayment, and then click on loan simulator. Once you click on that, you come to this screen. We recommend that you select the first column. I want to find the best student loan repayment strategy. You'll click on Guide Me, and then you'll be prompted to answer these questions. On page 1, it'll ask which of the following applies to you. If you have a job or plan to get one, if you file taxes, if you're married, if you have dependents, select all that applies. And then whatever it is that you indicated, it's then going to populate on the following pages. So in this case, it asks what your tax filing status is. It will ask what your income is, all of that information to then give you some answers and give you some estimates. So those are some examples here. Then it's going to ask you to confirm your loan situation, make sure that everything looks right to you, all the loans are selected and there. Then it's going to ask if you've indicated that you're married, if your spouse has loan information. If they do, you'll need to upload that. If they don't, you don't need to add that. If you are someone working towards public service loan forgiveness, I recommend you selecting yes to seeing the repayment options to maintain eligibility. I think that's always the best option if you're working towards PSLF. And then this is the big part here. What is your primary repayment goal? Our recommendation is to select have a low monthly payment so that when it gives you the estimates and the options, it will show you the lowest option. So in this case, the person went through, they're working towards public service loan forgiveness. They got an estimate for $339, excuse me, a month on the income contingent repayment plan, ICR. So this was the most affordable option. Now, I want to talk about this payment period that we have a red square around here that says up to 25 years. It's not telling you that you have to start from scratch and pay an additional 25 years. It's whatever it is that you've already paid towards. The goal is to have a full 25 years paid. So if you have been in repayment for 15 years on an income-driven repayment plan, and you're now going to enroll in ICR, you would need to make an additional 10 years worth of payments to hit the 25-year mark. That's the goal here when they talk about the payment period. Now, they give you the option of ICR, but I recommend that you scroll down to that blue button that says view and compare all plans so that you can just see everything that is available to you. So in this case, that person had ICR as the most affordable option, but then it shows some additional plans here, and these are non-qualifying for PSLF. However, if the person needs a lower monthly payment, these are options that are available to them. So in this case, they also qualify for extended graduated, the extended and standard. And then on the right-hand side here, it's going to have a little button that says view ineligible plans. You can click on that and see what it's saying. Again, the loan simulator is often in flux and it's often being worked on. So it could be that it's wrong. So in this case, it's possible that this person didn't qualify for the pay plan. However, it's been changed when it comes to the IBR qualification. Everyone should be able to access the IBR plan now. So this is incorrect. It told the person they're ineligible, but we recommend that you use another tool or contact your loan servicer to see what your monthly payment would be on the IBR plan. So don't take this as this is exactly what it's going to be. Again, these are estimates and things can definitely be different. Now, the next tool here is the EdCap tool. We really like this tool. It's pretty simple. It gives pretty good estimates for what folks are inputting. So you can use this and input your total loan balance, the annual interest rate, your AGI, your household size, number of dependents, and then it will calculate everything for you. And then on this next page here, we'll then see the estimates. So in this case, it shows the person's options for IBR at $98 a month, for pay at $98 a month, for ICR at $461 a month, the wrap plan at $150. And it also shows you the forgiveness required repayment term, the percentage of income that it pulls. And then for new borrowers, if folks are planning to take out new loans on or after July 1st, the new standard plan at the bottom. So this is a really good tool. The one downside to this tool is that it does not, it tells you all of the options, but it does not verify which ones you qualify for. So that is something that you would need to dig a little deeper to find out which ones you do qualify for. But again, an equally good tool. And if someone from our team can please drop the loan simulator and EdCap links in the chat, that would be wonderful. All right. With that, I'm going to toss it over to Sabrina Ashley. We are going to get into PSLF in just a moment here, folks. Thank you for your patience. Sabrina Ashley, I'll kick it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I've seen this question a lot in the chat already, so this is a great time to go over what you can do if you're struggling to make your payments and what happens if you don't make your payments. So we put together this little timeline for you all, and it essentially goes through all the little markers of what happens if you do not make a payment on your student loan. So the day that you are past due on your loan, the loan is now considered delinquent. And the loan will remain delinquent until the missed payments are made up, or you request a deferment or forbearance for that delinquent period, or you enroll into an IDR plan. When you're 90 days past due on your loan, the delinquency is then reported to your credit bureaus. Once you hit that 270 days past due, that means that your loan is now in default. Then, once you're 360 days past due, the loan is moved from your typical servicer that you may have previously had to a specific default servicer. So, the consequences of default are many. They include tax refunds that can be withheld, wage and social security garnishment. You could be ineligible for federal credit, like a federally backed mortgage, and there are more. You can get out of loan default by doing loan rehabilitation or consolidation. And one note that I will make here is that currently wage garnishment and withholding tax refunds are paused right now. So you should not be facing any of those consequences. Another note that I will just say is that if you are in this situation, it is completely fine. There are so many, actually millions of people right now who are delinquent on their loans, who are defaulted on their loans. It is not a personal reflection whatsoever. It is absolutely a reflection of the system. So if you're experiencing this, don't I encourage you to not turn away from it. Don't ignore the notices, and just know that you're not alone. And the last note I'll make on this slide is this small note at the bottom that federal Perkins loans, if you do have one of those loans, they can be placed into default after 1 day of missed payment. So definitely keep that in mind, and just don't ignore all those notices that you might get. Okay, so if you are not in that situation, but you're maybe teetering on the edge of it, and you can't afford your payments, you first, of course, should check your IDR eligibility and all those options. And if you still can't afford the minimum monthly payments, you might want to consider applying for a forbearance or deferment as a temporary and emergency option. So basically, both of these options will put a temporary pause on making payments. In a forbearance, you're not going to have any progress towards forgiveness or loan payoff, and you can actually choose to pay the interest during a forbearance period. There are fewer eligibility requirements for a forbearance. You can typically call your servicer and just ask for one. A lot of people just ask for a general forbearance. For a deferment, interest is going to accrue only on some of the loan types in a deferment. And then there are a lot of different types of specific deferments with different types of forms. So you can apply for a cancer treatment deferment, maybe economic hardship, rehabilitation training, unemployment deferment. So there's a slew of different types of deferments. You do need to go to studentaid.gov to apply for those specific ones. Okay, so let's get into public service loan forgiveness now, which I know is very popular in the chat. So the public service loan forgiveness, first of all, is a program. It's not a type of repayment plan. So if you're pursuing public service loan forgiveness, you still have to have some type of repayment plan that you are enrolled in. So the program began on October 1st, 2007, and we say that because that is when the qualifying credits started accruing. So if you have time that you spent in public service before October 1st, 2007, that's amazing. But unfortunately, they do not count towards the actual qualifying credits. And the program forgives the remaining student loan balance after you've made 120 payments while working for a qualifying employer. So that's about 10 years if you do it all the way through. However, the payments are cumulative, they're not consecutive, so you can pick up where you left off a few years later if you have a job change. And you should also allow for additional time for processing at the end of this 120 payment mark. And we have a little formula here at the bottom. Income-driven repayment plan plus public service loan forgiveness equals the maximum benefit. This just means that on an income-driven repayment plan, you can qualify for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and be paying less than maybe you would be paying on the standard plan. And then you would be also qualifying for Public Service Loan Forgiveness and get a majority or a big amount of your loans forgiven. And a note here at the bottom, for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, you do need to have full-time employment, but this is classified as a weekly average, whether that's with one job or multiple jobs, that is equal to at least 30 hours. And unfortunately, contract workers do not qualify, but you can have a couple of jobs and just have an average of 30 hours a week and qualify for PSLF. Okay, so we do have a checklist here that you will want to sort of ask yourself when you're thinking about public service loan forgiveness. You'll want to ask yourself, do you have a direct loan? Does your employer qualify? Are you in a qualifying repayment plan? And have you documented your employment using the PSLF form? Once you go through this checklist and you have done all these things, you're at the end of your repayment on public service loan forgiveness. You will want to use the PSLF help tool again, and then you'll click the button that says I've completed 120 credits. That will signify to the servicer that you have reached the end of the plan or the program, and they will begin processing your discharge. So what qualifies for PSLF? The loan types, they do need to be direct. So we have direct subsidized, unsubsidized, the grad plus loans, parent plus loans, and then direct consolidation loans. Your repayment plan has to be one of these, the 10-year standard plan. So if you're in the 10 to 30-year standard plan, that does not qualify, unfortunately. You do need to be in the 10-year standard plan. Or you can enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, like income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, or the income-based repayment plan. And once the WRAP plan comes out, you can also enroll in that and qualify for PSLF. And that again is the repayment assistance plan. For your qualifying employer, all levels of government are going to qualify. 501c3 nonprofits are going to qualify, and then also other critical public service employers will qualify. Okay, so what does not qualify for PSLF? If you have FFELP loans or Perkins loans, those are not going to qualify. However, those older loans can be consolidated to become eligible for PSLF, so you can consolidate them into a direct consolidation loan. Private loans, unfortunately, will not qualify for PSLF, and then also time spent in default is not going to qualify for PSLF. However, you can always take your loans out of default to become eligible for the program. Repayment plans that are not going to qualify are going to be the fixed alternative plans. The standard plan, like I was mentioning, that's longer than 10 years. And then most deferments and forbearances are not going to qualify, and this includes in-school deferment. So if you do have a public service job in school, again, that is incredible. However, because your loans are in that in-school deferment, any payments made are not going to qualify for PSLF. For employers, any government contractors, 501c4 nonprofits, political groups, and then labor unions are not going to qualify. You can be a member of a labor union, but the actual employer is not going to qualify. All right. And the coveted PSLF buyback program, very confusing. I have answered several questions in the chat about it. So what is the buyback program to begin with? Essentially, it is buying back periods of time that you went through that you did not make payments during, but you were qualifying for PSLF in every other way. So you are essentially buying back the historical months to make them qualify for PSLF. This may be because you were in one of those ineligible deferment or forbearance statuses, or maybe you were in an ineligible repayment plan. Any time spent in an in-school deferment, though, cannot be bought back. An important note about the SAVE forbearance, you can buy back the SAVE forbearance time per Ed's recent ruling. However, there is an update in that. So essentially, you can buy back the month spent in the SAVE forbearance, but they will not be calculated using the SAVE plan formula. They're going to be calculated using a different IDR plan formula. There is a lot of language that has come out, and a lot of people use the buyback for different reasons. So if someone from our team can drop in the latest article that explains all of this stuff in the chat, that would be really helpful. We encourage you to read through it because it is very confusing and it would take us a really long time to go through it here. One note that we do want to make on the buyback program is that there's an outstanding backlog of around 88,000 applications. So I know a lot of people in the chat have asked, am I doing something wrong? Why have I not heard anything? It's just because there's a huge backlog right now. So definitely we are seeing months to even maybe a year or years of a wait period there. So again, the buyback plan can be helpful, but there might be a little bit of a wait there. And then we do have a little scenario here. So we're gonna look at Sarah, who's a city planner. She's been working and repaying her loans for 10 years. Her loans are currently enrolled in the SAVE plan and in that SAVE forbearance. Before that forbearance began, she had 110 PSLF credits, and she would have been at 120 credits, but time spent in the SAVE forbearance doesn't count towards PSLF. So Sarah wants to use the PSLF buyback program for those months spent in the SAVE forbearance. What are Sarah's options? So option number 1 is using the PSLF buyback. She can buy back the remaining 10 PSLF credits that she needs to hit that 120 mark and have her loans forgiven. Again, we have that note that the buyback processing is extremely delayed. Option number 2 is the traditional PSLF way. She can just switch out of SAVE to resume repayment on another IDR plan. She would be making payments over the next 10 months to meet those PSLF eligibility requirements and then hit that 120 credit mark. Again, there would be a bit of a processing timeline there. So in both options, she would have to continue making payments until the application, one way or another, was approved and her loans were discharged. Okay, so additional forms of loan forgiveness, cancellation and discharge. The most common one that we see is going to be total and permanent disability discharge on this next slide here. There we go. So I've seen a couple of questions in the chat about TPD. This essentially provides full forgiveness on your federal student loans if you're totally and permanently disabled. And this can mean a lot of different things. So this can apply to a lot of different people. Borrowers must provide documentation from either Veterans Affairs, Social Security Administration, or a medical professional. The application is lengthy, but it can be really helpful for people. So if you think that you might qualify for it, that could definitely be a great option for you. Some other types of forgiveness or discharge are going to be borrower defense to repayment. We just had some good news in the news this week about borrowers seeing discharge come through on some of the borrower defense cases. There's also false certification, unpaid refund, teacher loan forgiveness, which is slightly similar, but definitely different than PSLF. Then we have closed school discharge, which is another common one, where a school might have defrauded you or closed and then made your degree ineligible. And then there's also death discharge. I did see a few questions in the chat about what happens if you enroll in one of these IDR plans, but then you pass away before you reach forgiveness. It's hard to think about, but the loans will not transfer to another person. They will be discharged in that instance. And then there's also Perkins loan forgiveness. So what can you do right now? This is an overall recap of everything that we have talked about. Just anyone, they can make sure that you access your studentaid.gov account, your loan servicer account, and that your contact information is up to date. So you're receiving all of those critical messages, especially if you're in the SAVE plan or you have things happening with your loans. Save any communications or documentation that you've received from your servicer, definitely including IDR and PSLF credit communication. Make sure you're saving that. And then also consider using that IRS integration tool for IDR applications for faster processing. That is just something that we've seen previously. A quick warning about debt relief scams. These scams typically will involve offering loan consolidation or debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. A lot of folks will claim to be the Department of Education. They're going to promise you loan forgiveness. There's a lot of bait and switch language that seems urgent, like immediate loan forgiveness. A lot of this stuff is a scam. Everything that we provide is free of charge. Everything that we provide is also found at studentaid.gov and is available to everyone. So you should not be, making any types of payment to consolidate your loans or fill out any of these applications. One note here about refinancing student loans. If you do decide to refinance your student loans with a private lender, you are going to lose access to all federal student loan benefits and programs. This is a completely personal decision. We do not advise anything on this just because this is not something we focus on, but that is an option for some folks. If you have any issues or complaints, you can use the casework tool and contact your representative's office. We can drop that in the chat. You can also contact your state AG office. You can look for your local or state student loan ombudsman if you have one. We can also maybe drop a link on how to find that. Also use your servicer website. A lot of them have chat and messaging functions. The phone, I know those hold times are not fun, but once you get through to someone, you can oftentimes find crucial information. You can also try their emails, and then you can also try to use the Department of Education's Help Center, which is found at studentaid.gov/help-center/contact. All right, and we do have 2 upcoming workshops. So if you want to know more about PSLF, we're hosting a workshop on April 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We can drop a registration link in the chat as well. We are also going to be holding an IDR workshop on April 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you are interested in finding out more information about either one of those topics, please register. We will be definitely focusing on those. And then if you want more information, you can sign up for our mailing list. You can find that at studentdebtcrisis.org. You can also follow us on social media. We are at Debt Crisis Org on all social platforms. And I will close this out. I just want to thank everyone for joining us. I know there are a lot of unanswered questions in the chat. So if you do have any outstanding questions, you can always head to our website, studentdebtcrisis.org. Also, just a reminder that there is going to be a recording, and all of the links that we've shared with you today shared with you via email in about 24 hours. And I just want to thank the team for showing up tonight, and thanks again for everyone for joining us. I hope everyone has a great night.